Hey guys, John here with 18 Inches Down, and I am ready for this today. How you guys doing out there? No, like for real. How you doing? See, we have a hard time sometimes as men just admitting how we're doing. We're like, oh yeah, man, everything's fine. Fine, bro. Then we don't want to go into the feelings category because we feel that that's weak or wimpy or feminine or uh, whatever, right? Depending on what generation you were born and you're listening to this, it's a little bit harder road in the hardening of the emotions than other generations. And so I want to talk about that today as it pertains to a woman. So this one is entitled How a Man Values a Woman, but I'm going to talk about a lot of things surrounding that because we have to first start with the man. Look, guys, I realize that a lot of you have been burned by women or a woman in your life. But it's like this old country song that says, for every woman scorned, there's a man who made her that way. And without putting all the blame on the men, there's a lot of truth to that. And you know it. I know it. Maybe you're not that guy that is set out to harm women or hurt a woman or treat her less than or put her down as some kind of an object. But there are plenty of other men who do and have. And so there's a lot of woundedness going on in both men and women. So maybe you've been the guy that's been traumatized by a woman and you're just like, man, it's brutal. She is this and that. You call her names and you're like, you promised yourself, man, I'm not going to get in another relationship because of it. You've said, well, I'll just hang out with the bros, hang out with the bros, and then you're good. Just you and your Coors Light and your foe and no mo kind of situation. And as long as you have your sports and your deep fried burrito at the gas station, you're good to go, But that's not life. It's not. That's not living. Come on. Let's get real. Every man wants a relationship in their life. Why? Because we've been designed to be that way for many reasons and for the simple fact of procreation. Way back, if you look at Adam and Eve for a second, you can look at a lot of religions, but Adam and Eve, when God saw that Adam was alone, see, he knows that we're alone. God knows that we're alone feeling a lot of times, and that no one understands us, no one gets us. So he brings us a helpmate that's equal to, not less than, one that can empower us just as much as we are valuing and empowering them. And we're to walk side by side as pilot, co-pilot, or sometimes the co-pilot takes over for the pilot. Did you realize that? In the airlines, I worked as a flight attendant for about a year at Southwest Airlines years ago. And I can tell you that it's not always the pilot flying the plane. It is the co-pilot sometimes. And so when we say that we're in control as a man and then women sit over there and be the co-pilot, well, guess what, buddy? Sometimes you got to get up out of that cockpit and go pee and do your business and then come back. So you have to have somebody fly a plane, watch it, and know exactly the same things you do as the pilot. And so we're coming into a consciousness now. If you don't believe that, if you haven't had that type of mentality because your granddad, your great granddad, and your dad said to treat a woman a certain way, less than you, then you've got some awakening to do. We all do, okay? Because it's been ingrained in the masculine side of things in our DNA to the point throughout society to where we're just like, this is the norm, isn't it? This is called systemic. It's permeated throughout. In other words, it's a systemic masculinity that says, I'm the man, woman, submit. And those days are over with, guys. If that's, you remember, this is the Conscious Man podcast. If something that is said offends you, just stay with me, okay? This is going to help you tremendously if, in fact, you're not a hermit staying alone by yourself, wanting to go live in the woods and be Survivor Man. If you want a relationship and want one that thrives, you would do well to stick around this podcast for a while, or others like it. There's plenty of others that have some great things to be said about this, but you're going to want to stick around to discover that you can have it all. You can have your masculinity, you can have your toys, you can have your boys, your bros, and you can have the woman of your dreams. And then guess what? She will in turn empower you and encourage you to do those fun things, to go out and play, right? But if we're dominating our way through life and we're the bull that doesn't care about the china, hear what I'm saying. The women in your life are like priceless china. Every single one of them, whether you agree with them or not, whether you can't stand them or not, whether it's your ex or not, they're priceless. Why? Because they're priceless in God's eyes. And so if we're going to be any sort of protection around them in a balanced way, in a wholesome way, and one that empowers the women in our life, then we're going to have to think like God. And if you don't, that's okay. We're gonna awaken to the point to where we do agree with unconditional love, because that's what we're made of. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot because it needs to be repeated to myself and to everyone else listening, all those around me, and I need it repeated to me, back to me. It's just a reminder constantly, because we live in such a dog eat dog world. We live in an I'm all out for me mentality planet. And thankfully, though, that consciousness is shifting. It's changing to where, hey, people are asking, how may I be of service? How may I be of service according to those things that I'm good at? And we are living in an awesome time. I really believe that we are living in the best of days, and it's only going to get better. How do I know that? Because my spirit, the real core of me, knows it. And so does yours. It just may be buried up with just working your brains out, trying to grind it out through life and all of the situations around you. Maybe you're in real suffering health-wise, or somebody you know and love is, and you just can't think about that right now. I implore you, and I urge you to look deeper, 18 inches down within yourself, because it's the answers to life. It's the answers to everything that you've been asking for and that you've been wanting for such a long time. It's what we've all been wanting to know. And now we're waking up to the fact that, wait a minute, maybe there's something inside of me that's more powerful than the ego-driven life that I've been partaking of. And some of us don't even know how egoic we've been. Some of us don't even realize just how entrenched we've been in this asleepness. And it's not a condemning thing by me saying that. It's just an awareness like, hey, okay, let's stop for a moment and see just how awake I am. But where do I need to awaken? Am I even self-aware? Because most guys I know, they just plow through their day. They grind it out, and they just kind of stumble their way. And then it has to be someone that cares for them, more times than not, a woman in their life that says, hey, hold on, there's the alarm bell, the red light's going off on the dash. And then we look at that, if we're not careful, as nagging. Okay, the only reason why a woman, quote, nags is because we're not listening. If we would take the time to nurture self-awareness and begin to listen, really listen, without feeling like our pride or our masculinity is threatened, like somebody's going to come with a pair of scissors and Lorena Bobbitt us, some of you know what I'm talking about. If we don't feel like that all the time, we're being made to look embarrassed. Who cares? This is the time of allowing embarrassment to turn our lives around for the good. Embrace embarrassment. And guess what? When you do, it dissipates and integrates. And then we become great. It's just facts, guys. The more we resist it, the more we resist looking stupid, the more we resist looking dumb or being, quote, humiliated or embarrassed, the more it persists. The more we resist, the more it persists. But when we allow, when we surrender, and then we welcome things into the light of who we are, the bigness of who you are, the bigness of who I am, because we're bigger than the universe. We have multiverses in us. Then it dissipates into the light. The more we resist it, it just keeps on. And then the nagging continues because the red light on the dash has not been addressed. You wonder why the women in your life are nagging you, and you're just going, telling your bros, you're like, hey, does your wife nag you? Yeah, mine nags me all the time. Mine does too. What's up with that? Well, do you ever stop to think that if the red light is going off in the dash, fix the flipping thing, right? But we don't fix it by going in and saying, oh, I'm going to fix you, woman. No, we fix it by sitting down and shutting up for a minute and listening with our heart. Listening, first of all, with our natural ears, and let it penetrate our heart, no matter how humiliating or embarrassing it is. Why? Because we're going to be better off, because then she's going to feel heard. And then when she feels heard, she feels safe. And then, brother, guess what happens? You get the good stuff. She will open herself up to you in many different ways and say yes to you when you're begging for it. Do you know what I'm saying? And the reason why women resist us is because they don't feel heard and they don't feel safe. That's the bottom line. If you can wrap it up in two main categories, there it is. There's a lot more to it, because women are complex just like men are, but women are complex in the most beautiful, wonderful ways. We're no longer going to bash the women in our life. That's my statement, and that's what I'm going to pull for on this podcast. Is like, look, we don't need to bash them anymore, because what we're doing is we're putting that negative energy out there, and then it keeps on suppressing them when they don't need to be suppressed anymore. They've been suppressed for generations. See, and men have in different ways, but women have been made to feel less than a man, and they're not. They're equal too. And it's not going to make you less of a man if you empower the women around you to be equal too. No, it's only going to elevate you. It's not going to turn things around on your head to say, you're less than a man now. I'm already being attacked by society, and you're telling me if I make her an equal, then she's going to take over. Man, you give a woman an inch, she takes a mile. No, sorry, doesn't work that way. You nurture the priceless jewel in your life, and you will have a life. You will get your life back. Okay, so maybe you're sitting here listening to this and you're divorced. Maybe you're sitting here listening as you've been burned. Hey, we all have. We all have. Now we can either sit in the burning and feel sorry for ourselves and go drink another Coors Light or go eat another fried taco to try and soothe the pain, or we can hit it head on, face it head on, and say, am I the issue? Is my subconscious program, does it need to be changed? Is there something about my life that needs to turn around? Is there truth to what she's saying? Is there truth to what she's, quote, nagging about? Is there truth to when somebody approaches me and says, hey, you might want to consider this? Even as brazen as it might be, look, dude, you suck. Or, hey, I want you to consider this. Or, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And then you, in your mind, are going, because you don't want to be embarrassed, or you don't want to let it move past the egoic zone straight into your spirit and your heart. You're gonna react instead of respond. And then you're gonna say, no, not here. No, we're not going there again. Why do we say that kind of stuff? It's because even if we're 100% right, we just don't want somebody to attack the ego that's actually led us down the path of survival all these years. It's been keeping us alive in survival. So why would I want to let somebody, quote, come against it? Because that is my life force, if you will, that's been sustaining me all these years. And sometimes, guys, we don't even realize that that's what's keeping us alive. We don't even realize that it's ego leading the show. We just think that this is my masculinity. This is how life works. And what's wrong with going out and making a living and providing for my woman and my kids? What's wrong with that? Well, nothing is quote wrong with that on the surface. But if that's the only way we think and everybody else just needs to get over it, then we've got some situations here. We have something that we need to look at deeper so that we can have a thriving, moving, vibrant home life and life in the mirror. You want that at your core, don't you? I do. We all do. It's just men don't want to admit that in public. I'm willing to go there because I don't give a rip anymore. I don't care what necessarily what people think. There's a little bit of part of me because I'm still growing. I'm still awakening. Yeah. I get embarrassed. I get humbled. I don't like people saying negative things about me. Nobody really does. But you get to a point where it's just like, okay, I'll sustain the blows because this is greater to help somebody, one person listening to this. If I can help one person by something I'm saying, then I've won. We've all won because then that person becomes a brighter light. They anchor the light where they're at by what they do and how they value the women in their life, and they value the ones that they love the most. And then it begins to be infectious, and then it begins to multiply, and then the world becomes a better place. Even if it's just 5 people in that one person's life their entire life, we've already elevated the level of consciousness to a different degree. You see how that works? We're all made of energy. And so it's just shifting energy. It's becoming aware of that energy that we're currently anchored in, and then allowing ourselves to ascend to the point to where, whoa, I'm becoming awake. So therefore, I'm growing in the things that matter the most. You know, there's a passage in the Bible that talks about the 9 fruit of the Spirit. And they're love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, long suffering, self-control, and what's the other one? Yeah, that was 8. So I'm missing one. Anyhow, you get the point. I'll think of it in a minute. But you get the point. And all of those elements right there, who doesn't want those in their life? I mean, if you're being very honest, who doesn't want those? Because all 9 elements speak of rest of soul. They also speak of completeness. They also speak of how you live in a society to where everyone is benefiting. Everyone is getting the best of everyone around them, and therefore you have a flourishing society because no one's ripping each other off. You're treating each other with love and kindness, and you're cherishing your neighbor. You're loving your neighbor as yourself. You're living by the golden rule, and then everybody's empowered. You begin to live in a creative utopia that's real, a substance of creativity that actually causes things around every single person to thrive, live and move and have their being in thrivingness instead of nothingness, instead of egoicness, if that's even a word. So when a man values the women around his life, including his mother, his sister, even if you hate their guts, if you begin to look at it differently, your ex-girlfriend, your ex-wife, even it doesn't matter how horribly they have treated you. Yes, there's some healing that needs to happen at the core level in your life. But when we point the finger and blame, as much as we think we're right, and we may be right in that situation, she may have really burned you and you're the innocent party in this. Okay, let's just look at that for example. Well, can you look at it as, all right, this was something that was meant to expand the greatness in me, rather than looking at negatively and dragging you down and causing you to just shrink in a corner, roll up in a ball, and never look at another woman again, or date a woman, or even desire it. See, there's 2 choices here. We can look at it as a growth, quote, lesson, and understanding that, wait a minute, maybe I didn't do so well in that relationship, because it always takes 2. And even if she is mostly to blame, if you can somehow allow the inner work to start growing and transforming you in the smallest of ways through surrender, then what's going to happen is you're going to begin to see her in a different light. That's how unconditional love works, because unconditional love is at the top of the frequency scale. And say you're down here in rage, or you're down here in resentment, you're down here in hatred, you're down here in unforgiveness. The lower you go, the more red it is. It's like the bull with red in its eyes, and you're just angry all the time, right? That's the lowest, actually, the lowest one is shame. So you're feeling a sense of shame surrounding the anger and the bitterness and resentment. So you're down here at the lower end of the frequency scale. Can I just say that everything in that vibration, everything in that energy attracts like it. So you're going to attract the taverns with the no windows in them. You're going to attract the dark alleyways. You're going to attract other dudes that feel the same way. And then you're going to wind up, more than likely, not all the time, but more than likely wind up in some sort of addiction if you're not already, because addiction thrives and moves and has its being in dark, dank places. Okay. So you're gonna live, and then you're gonna get sucked in more and more around that energy. And that's not what your core wants. That's not what our core wants. I don't believe that for a minute, that none of us want that at our core, because our spirit does not know how to hold that. It knows how to cast light on that and expose it in a way that brings life to those dark areas. Do you ever see that happen in a neighborhood that has just been neglected and abandoned? There's trash everywhere, and things are broken down and broken into. And then somebody comes and plants some beautiful something there, whether it's a business, a storefront, something, and they begin to plant that light, if you will, in that place. Well, guess what happens? It starts to permeate and take on, because other people take notice, and they're like, wow, if that guy can do it, or if that woman can do it, I can do it. Let me plant my beautiful business right next to it. Let me plant my tree, physical tree, in that place. Let me plant my light there. And it begins to take over, because the light is always, always brighter and bigger and more powerful than the darkness, because you flip on a light, it dispenses darkness. Just takes a little one. And so it's kind of like that. When we allow ourselves to become self-aware, then we're like, okay, maybe I do have an anger problem. Maybe I am PO'd at my ex. Maybe I'm just so angry it's eating me alive, because it's never, they're going on with their life, brother. They're going on with their life, and then you're sitting there soaking in it, sulking in it, stewing in it. It's only ruining you. She's moving on. She's probably not even thinking about you, right? And she's moved on. So if we're going to lose our power, and that's your choice, then that's your choice. You're powerful to manage your freedom any way you want. You have that free will power to manage your freedom any which way you want. But how about looking at it where I can use my free will to manage my power in a way that causes me to awaken to my own insecurities, my own subconscious program, to make me a better person. Allow that tragedy of a relationship to awaken us into an alertness and an awareness and an awakening that actually catapults us to become a more expansive, more valuable in your mind. You're already valuable, but priceless to someone else that enters your life down the road, because you became self-aware that you were jacked up in a certain way, shape, or form, and then you allowed the inner work to take place so that you could ascend and then be this model man that someone desires, that's even more awake and more expanded and more beautiful in the way that she is experiencing healing than the ex. Now, we don't down the ex as if they're less than. They're just dealing with their own subconscious woundings, right? And this is how God looks at humanity. God never looks at humanity and says, this person's better than the other. Never. Unconditional love would not say that, think that, or feel that, or exude that. If so, then it would be conditional love. But it's not. It's unconditional love. We all know that we reside in the stuff. We are made of the stuff. Unconditional love. And so when we're valuing others around us, we can't value them if we don't value ourselves first. That's why love your neighbor as yourself is the saying. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, you can't truly love your neighbor unless you love yourself. And we're not talking about an egotistical love here. We're talking about a wholeness love, going inward underneath the layers of egoic activity and wounding to go to the pure, whole, complete self. Because I promise you this, each and every person on the face of this earth is already complete. They just don't know it. They just don't understand it. They don't realize it. There is nothing missing, nothing deficit, nothing that needs to be added to your spirit. That's who you really are. If you were to yank your spirit out of your body and show it to you, it would be a spitting image of what you believe to be true about who you are. It's the real you, but even more so. See, your egoic mind can't imagine what you really are until it gets healed. Once it gets healed and integrated and comes in submission to, if you will, or it's the follower to the spirit, then it begins to reflect something wonderful. And you're like, whoa, I didn't realize I had that in me. You hear people say that all the time. Maybe you've said that. I didn't realize I had that in me. Oh, I didn't know I had that in me. Why do we say that? It's because we've awakened to the fact that we have the real us shining forth and shining through to say, oh, man. And then when other people, here's where it gets awesome, is when other people recognize it and they say, I knew that was in you. I knew you had it in you, but we just couldn't see it. See, this is what I often ask people. I say, look, if you really want to know what you're called to do, just ask somebody else. They'll tell you what your gifts, talents, and abilities are. They'll tell you what your strengths are. They will tell you what they think you should be doing. Okay? If they're really honest with you and they know you and they love you and they care about you, they're going to say that. And then you're like, yeah, I know. We say those things, don't we? We go, yeah, I know. I know. I'm just too busy working 3 jobs. I got to pay the bills. I got to pay the boat payment. Got to pay the 4-wheeler payment. Got to pay the jacked up truck payment. And I just don't have time to go into that. How many times have you seen this on The Voice or reality show? Dude stands up there and he belts it out, and you're like, whoa. And that guy works in a parts store? Are you kidding me right now? He works in a parts store. This dude should be, I mean, where's the contract? Let's sign him up, man. I'm telling you, one day, I'm going to have a record label, a talent company, because my wife and I, we can spot talent a mile away, and we're like, whoa, nobody has signed you yet. Nobody has recognized your gift yet. I mean, come on. Anyway, that's a side point. Value, how a man values a woman is to the degree he values himself in the mirror. And so this is why we allow the inner work to happen, guys. This is why we're in a consciousness level now where we're actually talking about these things and not being embarrassed by it. We're not afraid to talk about these things. I'm certainly not. And I would guess there's many that would be listening to this and watching on YouTube that would say the same thing, because we want to go there. We're living in a generation, I'm middle-aged, but we're looking at younger guys that are in their 20s, even their teens, their 30s or 40s. They want something different than the generations before them. And what is that? They want a transparent and vulnerable community of people around them to where they can become the same. But if we have the same old hand-me-down, as good as it may have been in certain areas, there's other areas it wasn't. The domination over women wasn't. The sit there and shut up woman kind of mentality was not good. Positioning ourselves as men above women was not good. We can go on and on. But what's happened is we've begun to awaken in generations. And when we do the inner work, we begin to awaken to the fact that, wait a minute, do I feel valuable? Like in every area, not just monetarily. Do I feel valuable in my emotions? Do I feel like somebody would want the treasure inside of me because I've been allowing the work to happen to heal my soul, to heal my emotions, to heal the woundedness in the egoic-centric area? In the programming of life, have I allowed myself to be cultivated by the 9 fruit of the Spirit? Have I Have I allowed myself to become more and more love every single day? Even though I may fall down 100 times, I get back up and I say, let's do this again. You never really go backwards. It's always expansive. Truth is circular. Okay, guys? When in God's realm, truth is circular. It's just like the planets are circles. We have circles in galaxies. We have circles in the cosmos. These are all signs of how God's truth unfolds. You can see circles in everything, in the Oreo cookies, all the way down to the hieroglyphics, and it goes on and on. So truth is circular, and so, but it's expanding circular. It's almost like this, and I say this several times, but it's like a cinnamon roll, because dudes can relate to this. So can women. It's like a cinnamon roll. When you put the dough in, what does the Pillsbury Doughboy do? I don't want to go there. I'd like them from scratch, but just go with me for a second. He expands. He doesn't shrink. You put some heat on him and he expands. That's how it works in our lives. You put some truth in us and we're aware of it, that things are heating up, then we expand because we acknowledge it. We recognize it, we acknowledge it, and then we embrace the change. So, for example, practically speaking, say you're in road rage, you're going down the highway, somebody cuts you off, and then they keep teasing you, they keep taunting you, and you're like, why can't they just leave me alone? I just want to take care of business, but they're pushing me to the brink here. I don't want to fly into a rage, and then they keep pushing it. Then they flip you off, they jam their arm out the window, they flip you the bird, and then they're laughing, and it's embarrassing, right? And then you get mad. Then depending on the level of your anger and where you're anchored at in that anger and that rage, then you may just fly off the handle and do the same back. And this is where people get killed, unfortunately. But if you're aware of the guy laughing at you and flipping you off, and you begin to change the narrative saying, oh man, I feel so bad for that guy that he would take his time to break his arm, jamming it out the window, flipping the bird to me. And then he would sit there and laugh like a little kid. I feel for that guy. And then you just, in return, just chuckle about it, you laugh about it, and then you're on your way. Now, I know that's easier said than done with people that have anger issues, okay? Depending on where we're at in our growth. I raise my hand, myself included. You know, there's been some of that in my life, not to that point, but I've gotten angry. Of course, I'm human. I'm a man. However, I've learned, especially in the last few years, that gives my energy away and makes me just as small as them, if not even smaller, because I'm reacting instead of responding. I am showing forth the same level of energy as they are, and it keeps me low on the frequency scale. So why would I want to do that? It doesn't serve me well. It does not expand me. It does not grow me. And especially, you know, I just saw this video the other day, yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I'd seen this one before, heard about it, but I saw the video about this Range Rover and this guy that had his wife and his 5-month-old in the back seat. A bunch of motorcyclists are around him. Maybe you've seen this. And one of the motorcyclists does something, I believe. Can't really tell unless you were there. And then it irritates the driver. And so the driver does something back. And then it gets into this big mess where the motorcyclist starts surrounding him. And then he's like, uh-oh. And so then he feels like his life is threatened. He's got his little 5-month-old and his wife. And so then he hits the accelerator and runs over one of them and paralyzes them, unfortunately. And then now the bikers are really pissed. And they're chasing him down. They finally get him out of the car, and they beat him half to death. They didn't touch the woman and the child, thank God, but they beat him up pretty well. He lived, but it's those kind of things, you guys. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth the risk to do that in front of the ones that we love? And then they look at you like, I don't feel safe around you. And this is where we have these big chasms that start to develop between the relationship, and the division happens, and then divorce, because of one moment like that, of us losing it, because we didn't become aware that we had these deep-seated, deep-rooted woundings and issues within us, and the programming that said, I'm going to react just like my dad did. I'm going to react and pay him back. You know, I came from a line of that as well on my mom and dad's side. Some real anger there, especially my grandfather on my mom's side. He was a little boxer. He's a short little guy. He would get out and box people's ears in at the stoplight that irritated him. He'd always threaten people because he was just angry. And then my dad had, struggled with the same kind of things. He was a big guy, so not a lot of people messed with him, but still it passes down in your DNA. And then you find yourself doing the same things. I've done it especially when I was younger. I've threatened people, or when I get angry, but it was usually the people that did something to me first, like the bullies. I didn't just set out to bully people. I couldn't stand that. But what I would do is stand up to the bully. When I was younger, I'd get beat up, but then, I started working out and learning a few moves and things, and then I wouldn't get beat up so much. But it was usually the guys that were acting like jerks around women, beating up on women, or saying something to me first. So we're all different. Just saying that to say that it doesn't make it right. It just means that I can relate. I can totally relate. And when we become self-aware and we start waking up, then we're like, oh, okay, I'm not valuing my own body. I'm not valuing the priceless gem that I am. I'm not taking care of my body. I'm not taking care of my emotions. I'm not taking care of my mind. And then if I'm not, then the women in my life aren't being taken care of. The people that really matter to me aren't being taken care of, because then it's all about me being angry or resentful or acting out, lashing out, whatever it may be. And so then that never does anybody any good. A soft answer, there's a proverb that says a soft answer turns away wrath, not a like for like answer or reaction. It only fuels it. Have you noticed that? When you react to something, you're fueling it. When we answer in a higher vibration, a higher frequency, it silences it. Try it sometimes. It absolutely works. 100% true. When somebody is escalated and they're ramped up in anger, they're really coming at you, answer softly as much as you can, as much as your ability, and watch that thing diffuse. It will eventually, if you keep at it. It works. And so that's how we know we're growing and expanding. That's how we know that we are becoming better men, is by how much we value ourselves. And then that spills out to everyone else around us. And then it starts to make the women in our life feel safe. And then we don't carry on the 1,000 generations of woman, sit down and shut up, keep your mouth shut kind of mentality. And then they begin to be valued for the priceless gems they are. And then, guys, you're going to get everything you want. I'm telling you, when you practice this each day, practice surrendering and sitting in silence, even if it's in your truck or your car, your BMW, your 4Runner, whatever you drive, and you sit in there for 5 minutes in silence and just close your eyes and receive. Learn how to be a great receiver. When you receive, you're going to receive the answers bubbling up on the inside of you. And then you'll get an idea. You'll get a highlighted emotion. There'll be a finger put on that area that you were just not conscious to before. And then when you let it come up and you send love to it, even if you just say, hey, I love that part of me. I'm sending love to that part of me. If anger rises up, or you're shown it's about resentment, or you're shown it's about offense, or you've been hurt and traumatized, if you see it bubble up in front of you, if you sit there for a little bit, you'll see something spark up in the inside. Move past the bills and move past all the things that you've got to do, get to work and all that kind of thing in your mind. And you just allow that stuff to float by. And then you start seeing these other things bubble up. And then you're like, oh, okay, that's the wounded side of me. I'm just sending love to it. And you allow love, the love that you're made of, to come up and permeate that thing. Then it will dissipate and dispense, and you've just expanded. You've just grown. Even if it's the smallest things, guys, that's where you start. And this is like deep level, but yet simplistic counseling 101. It starts there. It starts with ownership. Like, I'm taking ownership, and I'm going to be real, and I'm going to be brutally honest about what's happening here. My wife tells me I do this, and then I'm a jerk in this area, or I can't add up in this area, or I'm doing something that's really nauseating to her. Then you sit there with yourself for a minute and say, is this true? You'll get a witness on that. You'll know if it is. Is this true? And say, okay, if it is, then I need help. Okay, and I'm going to sit here and receive the help from God. I'm going to receive the help from the inner core, inner world that holds a whole universe. And I'm going to allow the healing to saturate that area of my life. And when it does, you're going to go back a different man. Maybe not all at once, maybe not the fullness, but she's going to see some little change in you. And it's going to go a long ways in valuing yourself and her. So practice that every day, guys, and you will see the change as you move forward. Because look, we don't have time for any of the other stuff. The more egoic crashing through things that we shouldn't, because it's just creating more of the same. It's just a cycle, and it's a repeat. It's on loop, and we don't want to do that anymore, do we? We want to become the amazing, priceless man that we've been sent here to be. And our only goal is to learn to love more and more and more. And guess what? You get all the fun stuff. Even more so when we learn this. It doesn't make you a weaker man. It makes you a more powerful man. All right. Till next time, allow yourself to drop 18 inches down where life really starts getting fun. We'll see you on the next one.